Welcome to the Friday edition of Bible Time. I'm glad that you're here with us today as we end this week studying the Bible together, going through the daily Bible reading at Believers Fellowship, where we're on a 2-year plan to make our way all the way through the Old Testament. And today we come to 1 Kings chapters 3 and 4. Now we saw in chapters 1 and 2 the establishing of Solomon as the king of Israel following David. And we saw that stirring speech made by David to his son Solomon at the beginning of chapter 2, calling him to act like a man, show himself a man, be strong, follow the Lord, obey his word, and God will keep his promises to Israel. But here we get into chapter 3, and it's not a good start. Chapter 3, verse 1, Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And that was wrong. Deuteronomy 17:17 said kings are not supposed to take extra wives. We're going to see Solomon's going to take a lot of them. This was done in terms of making alliances with other nations, but still, it's wrong. And then you get down to verses 3 and 4, where it says Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father, only he sacrificed and made offerings at the high places. And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was a great high place. And Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. That sounds good that he's making the sacrifices, but again, God chose one place, and that's where he's to be worshipped. Deuteronomy 17, verses 3 through 5, Solomon is not keeping that one either. However, the Lord is gracious, the Lord is gentle, and he appears to Solomon at Gibeon as he's making those sacrifices, and says at Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." What would you have said if the Lord said that to you? Well, here's what Solomon said. Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness and righteousness and in uprightness of heart toward you. That you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father. Although I am but a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant therefore an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this your great people?" Well, what a great request that is by Solomon, and the Lord was pleased with that humble, direct request for understanding and discernment. And the Lord not only gives him that, but gives him abundantly more than he asked. But you'll notice at the end of what the Lord is saying, he will give to Solomon. It says in verse 15, "And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." So the Lord gives him riches and honor on top of the wisdom that he gives him, and he gives him a promise of longer life if he will walk in the Lord's ways. Well, then we get to see the examples of the wisdom that the Lord had given to him. In the famous story of the two prostitutes who came, and one of their babies died, and whose baby was it? And Solomon proposes slicing the baby in half and giving half to each one, and obviously based on the response of the two, the one said, "Go ahead." The other one said, No, give it to the other woman. Though Solomon knew that was the real mother. So he demonstrates his wisdom. All the people are amazed because of how he resolved this conflict. And then in chapter 4, you see his wisdom in organizing his kingdom. Under Saul and pretty much under David, Israel was just kind of a confederacy of all these 12 tribes who kind of did their own thing. And now Solomon's bringing organization and leadership to the whole thing. And you see the wisdom of him in putting that all together. And you see the way that the Lord is blessing. Did you notice verses 20 and 21 in chapter 4? It says, "Judah and Israel were as many as the sand by the sea. They ate and drank and were happy. Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. That sounds like elements of the Abrahamic covenant. They're like the sand of the sea. That's what God kept saying to Abraham. And this piece of land, this property now that Israel possesses or rules over, sounds like what God had promised to Abraham. So great blessings are coming out. He's blessing he's blessing Solomon with wisdom and also with great honor and riches, and the kingdom is going fantastic. However, verse 26, Solomon also had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. That was another thing directly forbidden in Deuteronomy 17, verse 16, for kings not to put their trust in horses, not to accumulate a lot of horses, not to accumulate wives or not to accumulate a lot of horses. They're to live in simple obedience to the Lord, trusting Him in everything. They don't need to make alliances through marriages. They don't need to build up the armed forces. God will protect them in every way. Well, Solomon's not doing that. He's doing what every other king does. But the magnificence of his wisdom, the gracious gift that God gave to him of his wisdom, he becomes world renowned. Verse 29, God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure and breadth of mind like the sand of the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt, for he was wiser than all other men. Now that's God's great gift to Solomon, and Solomon is using it to organize and to resolve problems and becoming a great leader in every way. But don't be fooled by the grandeur of Solomon's kingdom. There's something going on below the surface here, seen in these little ways in which he is not paying attention to the law of the Lord, not paying attention to specific commands made to the kings. The outward splendor and the outward wealth that you see is masking an inward decay that's going on, not only in Solomon's life, as we're going to see, but in the nation as a whole. And that's going to lead eventually to the division between Israel and Judah and the destruction of the nation. Remember back in 1 Samuel when we talked about the theme being rejection, where the people wanted a king and Samuel was disappointed and depressed, and God said, Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. Yeah, they are rejecting him in a lot of ways. And while we're going to see some good kings along the way, the overall direction is to reject God, to move away from God's way, to reject his word, and eventually God's going to reject them. And Israel is going to go off into captivity first, and then they'll be followed by Judah. So everything on the outside looking good, even the displays of great wisdom looks good. But it's what's really going on in the heart that matters, and that's going to be revealed over time. And so we come to the end of this week. We come to the end of this month. We're still studying the Bible together, and we're looking forward to next week and next month. And here's something for you to look forward to. Next week, starting next week, Bible Time is going to be on the road. We're going to be on the road for a couple of weeks. We're going to be bringing you Bible Times from a number of different locations along the way. So I'm looking forward to, even though I might be gone, I might be on the road, I'm looking forward to still studying the Bible with you and still having Bible Time together. So have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week for more Bible Time.